So it's almost 4 o'clock on Friday, October 6th, 2023. We will see if by chance Stronghold Digital Mining at the close of the market at 4 o'clock potentially releases September 2023 Bitcoin production numbers. A lot of other major publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies have released their September Bitcoin production numbers. Stronghold Digital Mining has yet to do so. I think if we don't hear anything at all today, I think the odds go up that something is going on behind the scenes. And no, I don't mean anything bad. I just mean that there is likely an effort afoot to perhaps combine not only our September 2023 production numbers, but also quite possibly some additional catalyst-driven news, right, as it relates to our potentially our 25 megawatt and Bitcoin data center equipment. So, yeah, this is a little bit unusual. Typically, we probably would have heard about our production numbers for the previous month by now. So, I mean, hey, look, there could be a very simple explanation, whatever, and that's okay. I mean, right, it's not like there's a definitive deadline, but given what we know to be true about the, sort of like a little bit of the behind the scenes action at Stronghold Digital Mining, and by behind the scenes, I don't mean material non-public, I just mean stuff that's been discussed, but that is kind of easy to like overlook and forget about, right? Stuff like, hey, we have this data center equipment. I mean, it's not easy to forget about it when I talk about it as much as I do, but I'm just saying in general, right? It's easy to kind of overlook this, but, given what's going on, again, it's going to be a very, I think, both simple yet tricky process to get ourselves a place to put that Bitcoin, data center equipment, because remember, there are a lot of data centers out there that we can just take Bitcoin mining machines to and say, hey, you guys have all this empty data center space. Great, let's plug in our Bitcoin mining machines. What's a little bit not perhaps as common is for there to be space where you can just bring your own data center equipment, then, and you bring your transformers, everything else, hook it into an electrical supply that way, and then, look into how you fill that data center equipment with Bitcoin mining machines. So, not saying this is impossible, because clearly this is something that Stronghold Digital Mining has been studying for quite some time. I'm paraphrasing, but in one of our investor presentations, sort of the general description of the process was that, there were a number of companies that didn't quite get all the way to the finish line, right, during 2021. I think, in a very fortuitous way, right, the company got to go public. So we raised capital, I think, at a really amazing time in the market. Not so amazing if, you were sort of on the other end of that trade and ended up buying shares, right, at the IPO price. There was a short window of time when the, stock popped up to about, a split adjusted, I think it would be like $350 or so. But from the perspective of the company being able to like tap into a hot market, right, and raise money, we did that. But there were a lot of other companies that weren't able to get there in time. So the thinking is, hey, there are some companies that are in our backyard. Well, again, how you define backyard is that, within 30 miles, within 300 miles, that we potentially can partner with to either have a sort of like a power sub-purchase agreement, right, or just a straight-up power purchase agreement whereby we can energize our data center equipment and then, have it co-located there. That would be our third site, right, our third Bitcoin, Bitcoin mining data center site, so to speak. And then we got to figure out a way to fill it with Bitcoin mining machines in a way that's the most capital efficient. So I think there's a really, really a much higher chance that if we're not getting any information today, which, let's see, it's a little bit past 4 o'clock, if we're not going to get any information today regarding hey, what's going on with September 2023 Bitcoin production numbers, it's then plausible that, excuse me, all of this is going to be sort of combined into a like an omnibus press release where it's not just the Bitcoin, production numbers for September, but also, hey, this is where we plan to co-locate this data center equipment. Hey, listen, I think I've really, been reading more about the case, right, between the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust and the SEC, and I think this is it. I think there's a really decent chance. I know I talked about this yesterday, so I'm not going to belabor it again today, but I think there's a really decent chance that next week could be a real game changer. And you know what? It couldn't come at a better time for not just Stronghold Digital Mining, but for the entire publicly traded Bitcoin mining ecosystem. Here's why. If we were to see a real surge in the price of Bitcoin, which I think is quite likely, I'm not saying, hey, we're going to go from 27,000 to 100,000 right next week. I'm not saying that. I am saying that if it appears as if though there's actual movement, right, whereby, hey, the SEC is not going to appeal, right, the appellate court's decision regarding the litigation involving the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, if the SEC is not going to appeal that and instead attempt to craft a path forward, right, towards actually approving a conversion for Grayscale, right, from their investment trust, so to speak, into a exchange traded fund, I definitely see a scenario where Bitcoin can surge to maybe like 35,000 in relatively short order. Okay, maybe even plausibly as high as 40,000. That is really a really big deal. I haven't done the math yet, but just sort of like a very rough number here. If we were to see the Bitcoin network hash rate stay about the same, and by about the same, let's just call it 450, and then we saw the price of Bitcoin surge to say 35 to 40,000 per coin, you are going to see an improvement in hash prices. And to the extent the price of Bitcoin pretty much at that point, that's like the new low, 35 to 40,000. And then depending on how many entities want to try to front run what is likely to be a much more significant rush into Bitcoin once a lot of spot Bitcoin ETFs are out there, and you potentially have billions upon billions upon billions of dollars flowing into those funds, you could see a scenario where maybe by the end of the year, Bitcoin is up to maybe, 50,000 or more. All of that is really helpful for Bitcoin mining economics, assuming hash rates stay, between say 450 and 500, because bear in mind, it's going to allow companies like Stronghold Digital Mining to generate incredibly useful revenue, okay, ahead of the Bitcoin halving, which will take place probably in 6 to 7 months. It would really be advantageous for companies like Stronghold Digital Mining, right? The company that we co-own, the company that we're shareholders of, the company that we've been rooting for a very long time now. In my case, actively rooting for the company for over, I think almost a year now, in terms of like producing videos and publishing things and stuff like that. Actively an owner since June 10th of 2022, or at least that's when I started nibbling on shares. So I think this could be a really good break for us, right? For Stronghold, if we were able to get, maybe 6 or 7 months of some really good Bitcoin mining economics ahead of the halving, which is going to bring its own set of uncertainties and opportunities as well. So I do think that, the speculators amongst us who, on Monday, you start really taking a look at what's going on. Has the SEC signaled it plans to appeal the appellate court ruling? You don't hear anything on Monday. You don't hear anything on Tuesday. I mean, the announcement could come on Friday, of course, but I read a 4-page letter that Grayscale wrote to the SEC. It's dated September 5th, sort of saying, and I'm going to try to paraphrase, hey, let's start collaborating towards, making this a reality. Let's just kind of get the process going. I mean, let's stop the litigation. The appellate court ruled. Let's kind of move forward in a positive way, in a productive way, in a constructive way. So, and I think there was a letter from various members of Congress. Again, this is the members of a part of the U.S. legislative branch, writing to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, saying, you know what, a spot Bitcoin ETF should be approved. So you've got all these forces saying, let's do this. I'll tell you what, if we do it, I think it's going to really, really help Stronghold Digital Mining a lot. I'm not into making predictions about the stock price, but if I had to, if I had to make a prediction, I think shares of Stronghold Digital Mining have the potential to double. And it's not just Stronghold Digital Mining. I mean, we're going to see the entire publicly traded Bitcoin mining ecosystem move very aggressively higher. Were there to be a definitive statement by the SEC that, you know what, we are now in the process of moving forward with approving, right, the conversion of the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust to an ETF. And by the way, we're going to be taking a very close look at these other applications and essentially moving forward with approving those applications as well. From the Fidelities, the Van Ex, I believe, right, the BlackRocks. There's a whole slew of other companies that are interested in offering, right, a Bitcoin spot exchange traded fund. So I really do think that it's going to be a huge catalyst for Bitcoin, which if the price of Bitcoin moves up, that's potentially great for, Bitcoin mining economics. If hash prices, stay about the same, or I'm sorry, rather if the Bitcoin network hash rate stays about the same, hash prices will then more than likely move up. And again, that's just great for being able to generate useful revenue. I don't see any news release. It's about 10 minutes, it's 4:10 p.m. That's not to say that something may not come out later today yet, but I think something's going on. I really think something is going on. And that when we do hear from Stronghold, at this point, I'd be very surprised if we don't hear something more than just, hey, by the way, this is what we produced in the way of Bitcoin in September 2023. That could very well be what's announced, say on Monday or Tuesday or whenever, it's going to be announced. But I think the odds are now going up and up, right, that we're going to hear something more. And I think something is being worked on behind the scenes. And that's my intuitive sense of this. So we shall see. Okay, I hope you have a phenomenal weekend. Let's stay positive, let's be great, and we will see each other again next week.